hello everyone. Welcome to my show. And do you want to be inspired by extraordinary courage and real life stories? Well, you come to the right place. And this is a good place where truth and integrity meet, where I'll be introducing you today to today's thought-provoking and compelling premier whistleblowers, educators, authors, journalists, humanitarians, activists, and celebrities. And they all have one thing in common. They are people of truth and integrity. And many are considered modern-day heroes. And I have one of those people today. His name is author Brian Gardner. So I just want to say thank you for coming, Brian.
Oh, well, thank you for having me on the show and that glowing recommendation. I hope I can live up to that on this show.
I'm sure you will. I have to tell you. I'll tell you about his book here in a minute, but I'm going to tell you a little bit about him first. So Brian's first writing experience was in the late 60s when he wrote the Motoring Gazette, covering all things automotive. He also wrote Generation Rap, a column for teens for the Tract newsletter where his parents lived, and later he was a guest columnist in his local paper. And so he's also covered sports and published in Autoweek, and he also received an award for that. And he's written Christmas stories. He has hosted cable TV shows and radio shows, a Christmas concept toy-a-thon he was the MC for, won a local cable ACE award, and he has been the guest on 25,000 radio programs to date, which have aired in Canada, Mexico, and the United States. He has volunteered doing community work in San Francisco's Mayor's Drug Task Force Awareness Unit, various events with the local USO, and many other community groups. He also volunteered with the Las Vegas Police Department, helping them to lower crime in his area. Plan for America and the World is Brian's first book on social issues, and that's the book we'll be discussing today. And he states he wrote the book to empower all people so that we never lose the freedoms and liberties we all cherish. And it may not be his last book, so stay tuned. And he, with a flare of confidence, he is currently booking radio interviews, promoting the book on stations and podcasts all over the country. So, Brian, when you first started writing, you were writing about cars, Christmas stories, etc.
Right.
And now you're writing about government corruption, the military-industrial complex, and revealing the many topics that I personally have been researching for years. And when I read your book, when I found your book, I'm like, oh my God, this is everything in one book. Easy to understand. You made it very user-friendly, very layman terms, and it's just a phenomenal book. I mean, I have a folder of the various information related to your book, and it's right there. I was like highlighting, tearing out pages. So this is an amazing book. So up front on this, I want people to know where they can get your book, because I know any of my listeners are very interested in this topic, and I'm telling you, this is a book you have to buy. Absolutely.
Right. Now, the best place to get it is from my website, because at this point I'm still in the process of getting it on Amazon and that sort of thing. So I'm sorry to say I don't have it there, but they can go to www.planforamericaandtheworld.com, and they can purchase the book there. It's only $10, and I think there's a little shipping, but the idea with the book I want to lay out first is this is not a new income source for me, as if I wrote a book on recipes or how to decorate your home or something, which those books are fine. But this book is more about helping to people understand that they need to get educated about the issues today. Hopefully my book will motivate them, activate them, get them to the point where they're saying we need some changes, and they demand that improvement, and then we will see results. And so if someone came up to me and said, could I get your book for $5, please? I'd go, sure, because I want to get the book out there, because I feel that it will play some part, just like you said in the opening, keeping our freedoms and liberties intact, and that is extremely important.
I like the quote you shared with me in one conversation, and I believe yesterday too, something about, because I always say, educate, try to stay motivated and demand change. So
Sure.
you have something better than that, and I wanted to share that with people.
I believe it's the one from the Lord of the Rings movie. Is that the one that you're referencing?
I don't know. I thought it was something else. It was something similar to educate yourself and demand change. There was more points, but maybe it'll come to us a little bit.
I'll tell you what. I'm looking right now on my wall is I looked around in myself and said, why am I taking the time when I'm 67 on Monday And I'm still working 40 hours a week. I'm kind of that type of person. Retirement isn't in my vocabulary. And yet I spend my own time working on getting this book out there. And right in front of me, Ella, is educate, motivate, activate, need for change, demand for improvement, and that will produce results. And I believe that that is one of the things you're referencing, but I
That
also
is the
want to,
one. Mm-hmm.
yeah, I also want to give this quote from The Lord of the Rings, because oftentimes in movies, and in the back of my book, I have a homework assignment for America and the world, a bunch of movies that I feel are very important to watch with maybe a different eye than just entertainment. But from the Lord of the Rings movie, The Fellowship of the Ring, of course, the story, if people don't know, horrible, evil ring has to be destroyed, and Frodo gets it through a series of events. He's a hobbit. He's sitting there talking to the wizard Gandalf, and he says, I wish this ring had never come to me. It's so evil. It's so awful. And Gandalf says, I know. People who live in these times, wish that as well. But that is not for them to decide. What's for them to decide is what to do with the time that has been given to us. And also in my book, I have a series of campaigns I've been running for many years, and one of them is a campaign that practically anybody can take part in. It's the 1 hour a week campaign for community betterment. I just encourage people to do some sort of community betterment 1 hour a week, whatever it might be. And of course, there's a billion things you could do. And that leads right back to the point, all of us can make a difference. Rosa Parks, the lady who refused to give up her seat on the bus, proved that. But all of us can make a difference. We just need to go, let's see, what should I do with the time that has been given to me? And to answer your question, I did all this writing about automotive, and then I actually went through some counseling on different things, not because I was in deep trouble, but got my life oriented. I was feeling pretty good about myself and my relationships with my family and that sort of thing. And my dad, being a scout leader, always made us leave the campsite in better shape than when we got there. So that lesson came back to me, even though being a rock and roll drummer, my dad thought I didn't listen to anything he said. But that lesson came back to me, and I said, now that my life is a little bit in order, I want to reach out now with the time that has been given me and see if I can't do some things to possibly help this world improve. And that's where the book came from, because I was at a crossroads. I thought I might go into politics or be an author. If I would have gone into politics, Ella, I would have been a drop of ink in 5 billion gallons of white paint or whatever color. You understand, I go in, I'm looking pretty good. Suddenly I'm just dissipated in the sea of the kind of things that are going on in Washington. I wouldn't have made a difference.
I understand. And you say that we're living in dangerous times, and I'm sure, at least as far as our listeners go, they all probably believe that as well. These are very dangerous times, but it's an opportunity to learn and to see what doesn't work, and kind of you'll be able to find a way. You're like, you know what, this has got to change. This is a moment where people are upset. People want to make a change, and they just have to figure out what to do. And I know that one of the things you said, a quote that you had written was, if we each do a little for freedom and liberty, we will accomplish a lot. I love that.
Well, we have the numbers going back to my 1 hour a week campaign. So let's say I got lucky enough to, win the lottery, and I mailed one of those to every household in the country. Let's just say, for the moment of conversation here. And let's say 10% of the people out of 330 million people decided to, okay, I'm going to start doing my hour a week. I believe that is 30 million people around. Do you realize how different our country would be with 30 million hours of community service work done this week that wasn't done last week? No government funding, no appropriations, no passing it through Congress and getting it all snarled up and never coming out of Congress. The people would take back the health or lack of it of their communities just on 1 hour a week. That's what I'm talking about. We have the numbers, Ella. We just need to get motivated, and we can make incredible changes. That is why the evil people covertly push, he's black, you're white, you're different, you see, because the moment we start coming together, they feel like they are a target, and they might be. If they keep us divided, it keeps less of us going after their criminality. You see where I'm going with this?
Sure do. And so I just don't want to get too far ahead in our conversation before
Sure.
I get an answer. So when did you start to realize that this was deeper and darker than you thought? So you're living your life and you're doing these great things. So you start to work, you start volunteering. So
Yeah.
what was the first experience when you realized there's some dark stuff going on in the government and elsewhere?
Yeah, it is. I have to thank my brother, who he is so versed in the Rockefeller cabal, what really happened with the Kennedy assassination, which I feel is the turning point in this country, where the people who want to make things go the way they want to started turning things. And, he got me to read about that. He said, take a look at this, look at that. And I'm about 8 years younger than him, but he was getting me educated on that. And I could see easily, even before the JFK movies and all that came out, I could see easily that the Warren Commission was a complete sham, information not looked at, witnesses not looked at, witnesses disappearing at numbers that no actuarial study could ever support naturally. And so I also read Ramparts magazine, was very instrumental in my educational process about something happened that was a turning point where things, didn't seem to really get better. And that's gone over in the JFK movie. In fact, I wrote a song. I just want to read this one part from the song. It's called They. And, oh, didn't they kill all our heroes, the ones who would have really made some change? One by one, they silenced those voices till all the politicians sounded the same. There was a house cleaning, Ella, you know it, in this country in the 60s, and this country took a turn in a different direction than it would have gone if Kennedy would have been a two-term president, Robert Kennedy would have been a two-term president, and on and on. Martin Luther King would continue on with his work. That's where I got started. And many people got started there. Do you know the researcher Mae Brussel?
That sounds familiar, but I don't know any details.
She's from Northern California. She was like the first housewife to ever read the entire Warren Commission report. And after she read it, she said, okay. And she had her own radio show for years called Dialogue Conspiracy. And she did a lot of work showing what happened after Project Paperclip after World War II, when the Nazis were brought over here and made part of our government because they wanted their scientific information. But they erased all their horrible crimes and allowed them to have kind of a free reign. And some of that mentality is still percolating around in the dark corners in this country today.
Mm-hmm. And also, to go back to Kennedy, I believe, and many people who've spent years researching this topic with evidence, by the way, there was in the morgue, there was some evidence. And so it's not completely just us discussing and sharing quote unquote conspiracy ideas. There's facts and scientific evidence there's foul play. And he was trying to expose what was going on in the CIA, and he had a plan. And so, and then, and I'd like to touch a little bit upon the Project Paperclip, which kind of where I think that's where MK Ultra stemmed from. Is that where its origins are? Yeah.
Now, here's the problem with, bringing a fox into the hen house. Unless you lock that fox up at night because you need something that fox has, you're going to find some of the chickens missing. And here's what happened in Project Paperclip. You see, unfortunately, there's a book called The Men Behind Hitler, and there's other books about this. Elements in this country covertly supported Hitler because they wanted him to attack Russia. Well, he got into power, became a Frankenstein, turned west primarily before he went and attacked Russia for various monetary reasons they had. And then they had to put together World War II to stop him. At the end of the war, Hitler came very close to having an atomic weapon, and he would have used it, let me tell you right now. And we wanted that technical expertise, but if I was in charge of proper Paperclip, and many of your friends and the people you have on your shows, we would have said, yes, impart the information, but you're going back to jail. The reason you're imparting the information is because you're making up for crimes against humanity. That was not done. Their records were expunged. They were given government grants. They were allowed to link up with people here who had the same racist mentality. And you have to remember, Germany was beaten in World War II by who? America. World War I, World War II. Who beat them? America. Now they had a chance, these people who are evil, coming over here, being allowed to enter this country, allowed to say, ooh, baby, we can defeat this country from within this time. It's the only chance we have, so let's destroy the educational system. Let's not even look into a kid's diet. Let's just pump them full of psychiatric medication.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Let's have a lot of pornography everywhere to keep people all twisted up in that stuff. Let's raise the taxes obscenely high, because I need to share this other aspect with your listeners and you that I'm sure they know, but I want them to look at it in a fresh light. You have to understand, when the Vietnam War protests really got to their zenith, young people were dictating White House policy. You could not, before that war, and really have much of a chance of getting elected, and young people who had a chance to go to college without too much pressure, the country is doing well just after the war, had a chance to say, wait a minute, let me look into this. Well, guess what? The powers that be lost billions of dollars. You look at JFK, Kennedy was killed partly, there's a slice of it, because Bell Helicopter was making billions of dollars supplying helicopters that were getting blown up left and right. And so when they got beat up like that by these young, let me use their terms, these hippie freaks telling us what to do with our munitions sales, guess what they did? They entered drugs into the peace movement. Timothy Leary was an avowed CIA agent. That came out later. And recently it came out that the Gulf of Tonkin event, the entire incident that the Vietnam War was pinned on, was a complete fabrication.
I've been listening to that. Mm-hmm. A lot of people are discussing this.
Can you believe that? All it was, Vietnam was just a moneymaker, and they were bringing drugs back into the country on the reverse pipeline. So after the war, they ruined the educational system, on and on and on, because guess what? They never wanted young people to have a chance to think and be able to pull back the curtain on Oz ever again. Now they have a war over in the Middle East. I don't see any reports of reporters much on the ground telling us what's going on. And Ella, I feel like I'm kind of up on things, and I was shocked the other day when I read that war has been going on for 17 years, about $2 trillion a year that war is costing. And that money's going into the pockets of people who are selling munitions and selling stuff to support the war. And guess what? We don't get many news reports, and people kind of forget, is there still a war going on over there? They have manipulated this war to be a, cash cow they can ride forever, and they don't care one bit about the human carnage at all. These people, very few of them, but they are horribly evil, and that's why we live in dangerous times, because the final thing I want to say, and then I, of course, want to have interchange with you, but the final important point of this whole piece, how it goes together, is the fact that it's hard to say it now because we look at it and it seems silly. Germany could not find a way to get across 30 miles of water to land troops in England, because if they had, where would we have had our planes, which allowed us to bomb Germany and stop the war? We are lucky. That war was won by geography, because the technology wasn't there where he could invade England.
And to
I rest
continue on,
my case.
rest your case. And to continue on the Nazi talk that we're discussing,
Yes.
in your book, you talked about Interpol and the International Police Force,
Yeah.
which was staffed with ex-Nazi officers. I didn't know that.
Yes. Some exposés brought that out, and it was terminated. But I mean, what are they thinking? We're putting Nazi officers again in positions of police jurisdiction? Come on. You know, it's like that Nazi ideology is kind of like, you know, our age-old statement about cockroaches. They just don't die and they won't go away.
Right. Yeah.
And I
it's
don't mean individual people, because people, I believe, can be rehabilitated. People are basically good. I'm talking about that ideology that people subscribe to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, you know, one thing you were talking about, this is kind of changing subjects a little bit. We were just talking about the next level of evolution from this warring, controlling, with the potentiality of human beings can have and manifest within themselves. So I really like that you said the next level of evolution is ethics. And that's right. I agree with that.
Yeah, it's our only chance. Because, Ella, we talked about, and you know this more than you know your middle name, monitoring of people. Well, we cannot monitor every, company that makes chemicals and make sure they aren't dumping stuff in the river. At some point, a person has to have the wherewithal and the ethical power to go, I could save $40,000 if I dump this in the river, or I could not do it because it's wrong. I'm not doing it. And maybe even his junior officer at the work will say, oh, come on, George, no one will find out. No, we're not doing it. It's wrong. I'm not going to do it. We'll find another way. But that takes an individual with a strong ethical character. Now, guess what? If we don't rise to that level, then we will destroy all the fishes. And we will, somebody will throw a atomic weapon on that lake of oil out there. Wouldn't that be the horrible scenario to face? What if some psychopath puts an atomic bomb into that oil in the Middle East? Now we can't use that oil for 350 years.
Yeah, absolutely ludicrous.
I'm not a doomsayer. I believe we will pull it out, but I believe that until there's no breath in my lungs, I'm going to keep talking about people. We need to get motivated. We need to elect better people. We need to expose the people who aren't doing right, because we have got to rise to this higher level of an ethical nature, because that's the only way to prevent ourselves from destroying ourselves.
Agreed. And you found me. You came and you reached out to me, which was a blessing, because I just our first conversation, I loved your attitude. You're still positive. You think we can change it, and that's what we're hoping to do. I just thought we were two peas in a pod that way. And you found me. This says a lot about your character, because I interviewed Bill Binney, the very famous whistleblower that led Edward Snowden.
Gosh.
Amazing man.
That. Yeah, I loved watching that.
Thinking about him just gives me chills, because that is a wonderful man. I've been working closely with him through a friend of mine who's they're trying to expose a program similar to MK Ultra, which I happen to be involved with, and they're just very noble people. They bit off more than they can chew for the moment, but with Kirk Wiebe as well. And as I said, Edward Snowden based his decisions on Bill Binney. And Bill Binney, they raided his home. They held up guns in the shower and dragged him off and took his land. So that's why Edward Snowden didn't follow protocol, because he saw what happened to Bill Binney, his hero. And I believe he worked with him as well.
The thing that I found so tragic is his report that the FBI actually fabricated false information. FBI is supposed to be somebody we can trust, and somebody that we can know they would never try to entrap somebody with false documents. And that just shook me to the core, because if you can't trust them, then we're a little more in trouble,
Mm-hmm. Agreed. I mean, and that's I should just bring him on, see if he's willing to do an interview about just surveillance within itself. I'm ready. I haven't interviewed him in at least a couple years now. So, and like I said, he actually inspired me to get into this work and this focus on whistleblowers, and it also led into authors and journalists. So he's the reason why I'm sitting here. He inspired me, and he is a good, noble man, just to the core. You can just sense that about him. And he believes, even after everything he's been through, and it's a lot, guys, he still fights the good fight, so to speak.
Here's the bottom line that the evil people always forget, and it doesn't matter that I'm saying this on a show where they might be listening, because they just don't get it. And there may be...
We have a commercial coming up. Go ahead.
Okay, I'll make this pretty quick. There may be a little emotion on my voice, because how the heck did a bunch of farmers in 1700s beat the most...
We'll be right back. Well, welcome back, everybody. And I'm here with Brian Gardner, and we are discussing Plan for America and the World, his new book that we're discussing in great detail here. So one of the things we're just discussing was morals and ethics as being the next step in our evolution and where we really have to go in order to save this world and trying to rebuild this country.
Right. I'm just going to go back to that point before the break. How did a bunch of farmers beat the most powerful warring nation in the world, England? There should have been no way. I mean, I could have been in a pub and heard the guys go, "I think we can beat them." Are you crazy, man? They're the biggest warring nation in the world. You can't win. But you see, here's the thing that evil people always forget, Ella. You cannot stop the human spirit for freedom and liberty. It goes beyond guns and cannons, and you can't squelch it. Excuse me. And that is what they always forget, the evil people, and that's what is our saving grace, that is a powerful force for good in this world.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. So we discuss this briefly, what can people do? There's social programs they can get involved with. There's, let's talk about responsibility first.
Yes. I believe it's the responsibility of everybody for the outcome of this world. Now, that doesn't mean you have to quit your job and suddenly have no money and you're working 125 hours a day or anything. You don't do that. You want to keep your life in balance. But I believe that all of us have to spend a little time figuring out what we want to do. Now, the first easiest way to do this is find out what issue you're passionate about. Maybe it's animal abuse, maybe it's too much money in government, maybe it's one thing or another. And then go to the computer, which is also our saving grace, because we can be in touch and they can't stop it totally yet. And so you can find out what organizations are struggling to get things done that is your go button, your passion, and you volunteer for them maybe a couple hours a week, and they will open their doors and greet you and give you a cup of coffee and be so glad you came in to put stamps on envelopes or whatever they need you to do. And then you feel like, gosh, I am doing something. From that beachhead, then you can see what kind of time you have. Maybe you want to be an officer in that club, or maybe you want to do something else. But I would tell everyone listening, don't ever discount the fact that it doesn't make a difference that you're volunteering at your favorite organization, nonprofit organization. Do not discount that. That is important, because you're helping them to save the next person from suicide, or save the next kid from getting on unnecessary psychiatric medications, or saving the next animal from abuse. So you are making a difference, and don't ever discount that. And here's the other thing I think is magic, Ella. You let's say you interviewed a person who's not doing any community work right now, and their back kind of bothers them, and they got a lot of bills, and the house needs cleaning and all that. You start putting your attention on another cause than yourself, and that doesn't mean you neglect yourself, but you start putting your look outward, suddenly the back doesn't hurt so bad, and the bills kind of getting organized, and your daughter comes over and says, "Mom, let me clean your house." Marvelous things happen. I'm telling you, it's true. You put your attention on more than just your own life, and it starts to improve your life.
Yes,
Yeah,
I
and the
can
world you
attest
live
to
in.
that. Yeah, I can
Yeah.
attest to that. I was going through so many things, and I just was dwelling, and I'm like, this isn't like me, because I really truly am not one of those woes me
I can
types.
tell. I
And
can
so I
tell.
just said, you know what? I'm going to get out there and volunteer and go do whatever I can. And it wasn't to be a goody two shoes. I just needed to not think about myself, because that's the worst thing.
Right.
Depression is anger
Yeah.
turned inward. So you just got to get
Yeah.
out of yourself, and then things change.
Right.
And then I found a community that I was involved with. And then I started interviewing incredible people that gave me wings, like Bill Binney, Kirk Wiebe, and some other
Right.
amazing, Blake Percival, Colleen Rowell. I mean, Rowley,
Mm-hmm.
just so many, oh, just a wonderful people that fought against all odds and sacrificed themselves to do things. And of course, I can't be one of them, but I can do my part to help people on the
Right.
level that I can. And all these hosts here are here. They're not making a bunch of money off this, just to share information. They're trying to educate people, because people are in a daze and people are sleeping, or they're drinking too much, or they're watching too much TV, or there's so many distractions. But
Yeah.
you have to have
I go back to
balance.
The
Yeah,
Lord of the Rings. There's some very good messages in that movie that have nothing to do with fantasy and that sort of thing, and
you're
science
right.
and fiction.
Yep.
Do you know the Ents were the trees that were alive and could walk around? And the head Ent named Treebird said, it's really a problem. If the Ents start standing still, they fall back to sleep, and it's hard to wake them up. The same way with people. I'm not criticizing people for wanting to watch TV, but if they sit there and watch too much TV, you do get kind of sleepy, I look at TV as kind of like ice cream. You don't eat it all the time. It's something you do here and there to get knowledge for yourself or a little bit of entertainment. But that example in The Lord of the Rings, those trees would go back to sleep, and he would lose some of them, and they would never wake up.
That's interesting. Yeah, there's a lot of metaphors, and that's why
Yeah,
that's why those books have been around for so long.
I know. I know.
Absolutely.
So
And
that is
they can be
something
interpreted in so many ways too. One
yes,
person can
yes,
perceive it one way, but all in a higher mindset, I have to say.
of course, yeah. So that is an answer to your question, that people can volunteer. It is absolutely important. It is not to be dismissed. The organizations, if who are listening, going, thanks, Brian. I hope some people knock on our door. you know, and the other thing is to keep a positive attitude, even though the minions of negativity are sitting there laughing in your face. I've got to tell you one relatively personal example. I'm like anybody else. Sometimes I spend too much money and whatever. And there was a point where I really needed some checks for retirement home performances to arrive in that mailbox today, And they were not supposed to get to me for a couple of weeks, and I'm going, oh, God, this is going to be interesting. So I went to sleep saying, nope, I do not agree. I know they're supposed to take 5 days to get here. I do not agree. I'm going to bed. Everything is going to be fine. And, and the minions of negativity laughing in my face. Ha ha, look at him. He thinks it'll get here in time. I go to the mailbox the next day, and the checks suddenly got there earlier than they were supposed to. Go figure. Positive attitudes are important. Can I tell that story? Would it be okay to tell a story about what happened to that small town? Do you think that's appropriate for our show here? Your
Sure, I
show?
think that sounds fine. Mm-hmm.
All right. So this apparently is a true story that was told to me by my brother about something that happened in the 40s. I won't make this take too long, but there was a small black town, black mayor, black sheriff, and mainly black people in the South. And they got a call from the head of the Ku Klux Klan. He said, hey, guess what? You are not going to have a black town in our area. We're going to come in and burn this town down and get rid of everybody. And the mayor he was talking to, the mayor said, well, we'll call the police. And he says, the sheriff's one of us. And then they had a town meeting in this small black town. They said, what are we going to do? They're coming in at noon to burn down the city. We don't have police protection. What are we going to do? Here it is, noon. Ku Klux Klan rides into the city. and they are faced with every single citizen of that town waving flags, huge banner across the street, welcome the Ku Klux Klan. Every bit of food they could find was on tables with tablecloth. The jazz band was playing like there's no tomorrow, and they're all cheering when they rode in. And apparently this is a true story. The Ku Klux Klan said, "Man, you people are crazy. We're out of here." I absolutely will love that story till my dying day, because it's like, what else could they do?
Exactly.
What else could they do? And it worked. You know?
Just had a reaction that they weren't expecting, and a powerful one.
Well, it was love. These guys are evil. They can't stand somebody loving them. They know they're wrong. And when someone loves on them, it makes them like, oh, God, I really shouldn't be getting love. You know, I'm out of here. You know?
Well, I don't know. There's certain personalities. They just feel like it's just something intrinsic. But now that we're supposed to be evolving, hopefully we can see this, like the chauvinism. And, you know, you see it in animal behavior, and we're all, things are changing all over. But I agree. I just agree, just doing a small part, and
Right.
to the radio hosts that are doing a big part, just getting on here and talking about information that should be discussed and having that conversation. And I feel this is a position, I've said this before, this is a position of privilege. And if I don't use my position to elevate people, educate people, and shine a light on truth and crimes that need to be addressed, then I have no business sitting here. Absolutely none.
Yeah. I mean, you've been given a good voice. You've been given good health. You've been given the wherewithal to do shows. It's kind of like you really do need to use that gift. And one other thing I want to say that people can do, this is even easier than an hour a week, and boy, does this produce results. I have a chapter in my book, Renaming Our Politicians. You don't have to buy my book. I'm going to tell you right now. This shows how much I just want to get this information out there. You know, I'm Johnny Appleseed on a rocket, okay? And for those who don't know Johnny Appleseed, he went around by himself spreading the apple seeds to grow trees, you know. But anyway, you should, from now on, start calling your elected officials by a new name, public servants. Now, some of them might have been called that before, but let's make it across the boards. They're going to be called public servants, because guess what their job is? They are supposed to be serving us. We are their bosses. And they need to be reminded of it, because too many of them, by looking at their actions, both sides of the aisles, have kind of forgotten this. So when you send a fax, when you write a letter, when you call, when you mail something, when you email something, you know, put a little line in there about, you know, by the way, I'm going to start calling you by a new name, public servants, and I am your boss, so I hope you'll take to heart what I say in this letter. If you get a bad reaction, how dare you call me that? Well, that's just demeaning. I'm a senator. How dare you know? Whoa.
Yeah, I don't think they would say that, but they would definitely be thinking it. Yeah.
Yeah, but you might. I know they probably wouldn't say that, but on this show I need to illustrate. You might get a little reaction of some sort, and if you get a negative reaction to you saying that, hey, you know, I'm your boss. Mm-hmm. Then you know that this person probably is working for vested interests and not you. Keep that in mind when you go to the ballot box next time. You see.
What do you think about all these? Test. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. I might have.
Yeah, it's a litmus test. Mm-hmm. Just throw that out there and see what happens. Because a good politician will say, "I know. Yeah, you know, you are my boss. I will try to get that bridge built for you. Yeah, yeah." See, a good-hearted person would respond that way. You see. Mm-hmm. So go ahead. What were you going to say?
I'm just going to say, what do you think about politics at this day and age, and what do you think about the people who are running in the Democratic Party?
Well, I am an independent, so I don't criticize by name anybody in my book, and I don't really criticize the Democrat or Republican Party in my book, but I'll tell you this, there is way too much money. Because right now, if you or I wanted to be a U.S. Senator, we would have to get together at least $50 million. All that level of money does is make sure that the politician, before he or she sits down in her new seat in Washington, is already bought and paid for. Because guess what? I don't have $50 million to give to Nancy Smith or Tommy Smith to make sure they do good things when they get there. I could give them, $1,000 maybe. So the people who are vested interests, who have that kind of money, go, oh, you want to run for senator? Okay, here's a bunch of money, but, when you get in there, here's a list of bills we'd like you to really consider voting this way. And that is what's wrong with our politicians. We've got to get the money out of politics. It has to go. And in my book, I have the solution to it that I think is quite workable. But whatever way we do it, we need to get the money out of politics because it is causing our politicians to have their hands tied. Some of them might want to vote for that bridge, but if they have a vested interest who's going to put oil derricks there, no, Senator, don't vote for that bridge. We're putting oil derricks there. Yeah, I remember we gave you a bunch of money for your campaign. Okay, we're good. One of the books one of the movies in the back of my book, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. You should watch that movie not from when it was made, from today's viewpoint. I don't think that movie could be made today because it shows exactly how controlled our senators are.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And the other thing is, I don't know who I was talking to because I talked to so many people in 1 week. The money that goes into these campaigns, imagine what that money could be used for.
Right.
As far as making sure people have more food. And it's just, wow, all that money wasted.
Yeah,
that could have gone for good use.
Yeah, the money is not going to help anyone. It's going to say, I gave you this money. You need to do what we want when a bill comes up about our corporation, okay? Because, Senator, we did give you a lot of money. We can put this into the auto racing circles. Of course, the driver of a race car that has any, clothing cleaning substance or whatever product on there, of course he's going to talk highly about it. They're paying for the engines and all the travel around the country for that team, of course, and that's okay. But when it gets into politics and now the corporations are manipulating our elected officials to vote one way that may not be good for us, now there's a problem, you see.
Mm-hmm.
And so we just got to get the money out of politics. It just isn't correct that it shouldn't really cost $50 million to become a U.S. senator. And they shouldn't go there for 49 billion years, I got a laugh from my friends when I use this example. You go to a picnic, you put a slab of meat on the picnic table, maybe you'd touch it if it was out for an hour. You leave that piece of meat there for 40 years, no one's going to go anywhere near it. It's rotten, stinky, horrible. Well, why would we put our politicians in Washington with a big target painted on them that they need $50 million every time they run, and we leave them there for 40 years? Well, of course the vested interests are going to own them. I've stopped being a conspiratorialist, and I'm looking at myself as a police investigator. Who would stand to gain? Mrs. Smith dies. She has a $500 million life insurance policy. We're talking to Mr. Smith no matter how squeaky clean he is. He's the first one we're going to talk to. Why? Because we think he's guilty? No, because he stands to gain from that. So we better have a little discussion with him. If he's cool, great. Find somebody else who can gain from her death. You see what I'm going at here?
Mm-hmm.
It's, these corporations, of course, want to control it so they continue to make their profit and bills get enacted to support them. In fact, I knew this right away, but thank gosh, there was a court case recently that Roundup does cause cancer. It has been proven in court now, because when I go into stores that sell that stuff, it's just plastered all over the shelves, and it's so dangerous. But they were trying to hide that, just like cigarettes. Cigarettes aren't addictive, please. What am I, a third grader? Yes, it is addictive. Come on,
It's as addictive. Actually, as an ex-drug and alcohol counselor, they say it's as addictive as heroin. It is definitely addictive. And they put these ingredients in there knowingly that create addiction the way that it hits your bloodstream. And so it's crazy, absolutely crazy.
Now,
so you have
go ahead. Yeah, there's an example. If we don't have good values, how many people have been killed by cigarette smoking alone? Well, if somebody's interested in population reduction because they want to make it easier to control 300 million people than 7 billion, which some people have talked, I can't believe they've talked openly, that the population of planet Earth should be brought down to 300 million. You know, that's genocide on a scale we have never witnessed before. And if the people who are grabbing a hold all of the reserves would just loosen it up a little bit, we would be able to feed all those people. They are the problem. It is not the problem of too many people. It's a problem of allowing somebody like the Federal Reserve, who isn't even owned by the United States, to control our money. That's like the fox controlling who gets to come in the hen house, for gosh sakes. I mean, it's just ridiculous. There are some things we got to change, you know?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think we can all say that.
If I could just get fired up about this, you know?
Yeah. And, you know, human rights, that's something I focus on a lot. And I know there's a chapter in your book about it as well. What is your biggest concern as far as human rights go? I think there's so many human rights violations occurring around the world. It seems overwhelming, and it is. But what do you want to say on that topic?
Yeah,
what would you like?
Okay, everybody open your ears on this one, because let me tell you right now that there's a gray area here. Some will say still in the womb, but let's just set that issue aside for a minute. The minute you are born anywhere on this entire planet, you have all the freedoms that you have, boom, the minute you're alive. You don't have to have a decree here, sign this and you'll get your freedoms, you know, in 2 weeks, you know. No, you get them because you are a living being individual. I don't care what the head of some country thinks. Okay, in this country, you can only say this, and we're only going to have this religion, and you can only be outside at this time of night, and whatever. No, they don't have that right. And the best thing I can tell people to do is to go to the Foundation for Human Rights. It was based on the UN Declaration of Human Rights, and basically they have put together some incredible videos about human rights. And by watching these, you gain a true understanding of that document that was kind of put in a desk drawer and wasn't, you know, used very much. And the Organization for Human Rights is just absolutely incredible as far as the work they're doing to make sure that young people know about their international human rights. And that is something that is extremely important, and the videos are very, very moving. They are really, really something. And I was looking for the Youth for Human Rights International. You can go to their website, and then you can watch these videos, and I'm telling you, some of them are incredible. They are just really, really incredible. What they've done is a public service announcement for each one of the rights that's delineated in the UN Declaration, International Declaration of Human Rights. And that is very important because leaders too often think they can dictate what people can say, what religion is okay in this country or that country. And, you know, all of us know that our Declaration of Freedom and our Bill of Rights and our Constitution does not give us those rights. It reminds us that we own them, and that is so important. That particular aspect must never be diluted in this world, you know, that somebody gives you your rights. No, you have them because you're a living, breathing individual. Very important.
Definitely. That's something with a great focus I look at, and I'm interested
I hope you can go to the website and watch. Can I just share one of them with you real quick?
Sure.
One of the ones that's depicted?
We just have a few minutes anyway, so share any websites that you think might be helpful and how to get your book. But I'm telling you, Brian, you need to get your book on Amazon because that book is priceless. We need to get as many people, and it's so readable. It doesn't matter if you have a PhD or if you're just a common person. I saw that in the intro. So this book is so important. I want it out there. Everyone needs to pick up this book. And I actually know publisher I'd like to put you in touch with off the call, off the show, of course, because I think it's that important for people to understand. And because you cover solutions. I'm all about getting out there and trying to make a difference and doing activism, even if you're using your voice only. So anyways, go ahead.
Now I'm 67. Is it hard to get your book on Amazon?
No, it's not actually. People self-publish all the time. You wouldn't
Okay.
believe some of the content. Anybody can do it. Just go to Amazon, have your son look at it, and then I'll put you in touch with this one particular publisher that focuses on books like this.
Yeah.
So website. Yeah.
Good. www.humanrights.com, and you can find out, and I encourage you to go look at them too. So the one I wanted to share with you real quickly, it's about privacy. We have the right to privacy. So the scene is in this cafeteria, and this girl is doodling that she likes this cute guy over there, and she's writing his name and all these hearts and stuff. And some little creepy guy grabs it from her and hands it to the guy that she loves. Now she's mortified because she thinks he's going to open it and see that she really likes him. She'd be so embarrassed in front of the entire cafeteria because they're all watching now because he took it from her and he's going to give it to this guy. He gives it to the guy she likes, and he looks at her, and he walks back over to her unopened. Right to privacy. It is so beautiful how this depicted in 1 minute. It's a public service announcement. And people will go there and they'll just love the public service announcements. They are amazing pictorials of our freedoms, our international freedoms.
Brian, it's been such a pleasure, and I hope you come back because there's so many other topics in this book that I would love to discuss, and I love your attitude. And so as far as this station, we need to support the station. You can even support me and the network, of course, to go to the archive page on truthfrequencyradio.com or tfrlive.com, and you can, you can subscribe. And again, it's helping me, but I actually use all the money towards billboard campaign that I'm working on, and people that are in need. Sometimes I get people who are just desperate, who's have been thrown into institutions when they really shouldn't have been. It's just crazy the things going on out there. You guys have, well,